us have had a relatively busy afternoon, but that's okay. We are happy. So, Chris, you said you had a couple amendments.
I do, Representative Umberger. I have one in your name and one in Representative Turcotte's name for Senate Bill 409.
Okay.
Pass them through.
Yep, please. So we'll do 409 first.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
can I ask a question before we
You
deal with
can
the
ask
amendments?
any question you want.
Okay. Over the weekend, I read these bills, I read the amendments, I read the testimony from the hearings, and after this morning's hearing, I was much more confused than I was before.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, so on 409, the active language here is the governor declares a state of emergency and the municipality has applied for assistance. The governor, with the approval of the executive council, may approve a non-interest loan up to the amount of assistance from FEMA funds not otherwise appropriated. So that's 409.
Mm-hmm.
In 402, the language is, the governor declares a state of emergency and municipality has applied, then the governor, with the approval of the fiscal committee and the executive council, may approve disbursements of financial assistance to the municipalities. Okay, so what is what with both of these? Are these both the same?
No, not quite.
One has a non-interest loan, which we consider a grant, I guess, or whatever. It says non-interest loan. And this, and 402 is just a disbursement of general funds, apparently.
Yes.
After FEMA's kicked in.
Okay. But is this language straightforward enough that it does what it does what the intent was?
Well, yes, I think the language is clear.
Or do we need them both?
And my question is, do we need them both? You know,
One. Combine the
She
two.
just, no, that's it.
I from my perspective, it's going to be one or the other. It's not going to be both. So, okay, we have two amendments here.
Oh, you got an amendment.
Yeah, to 409. And Representative Turcott, why don't you tell us what you've done?
Sure. In the original hearing, I just had some questions on when it talked about anticipated assistance, and I wanted a little more clarity on that. So Mickey drew up this. So it would, instead of saying that, it would say anticipated assistance from FEMA, and then the change is as agreed upon by the Division of Homeland Security, Emergency Management, and the municipality, which is what I was going for.
Okay, so that just clarification. Yeah, that was already there. Yeah. Okay. And then what my amendment does is says that you have to apply for hazard mitigation grant funding. In other words, if we've heard the horror stories down along the Gulf Coast where flood after flood after flood, and nobody does anything to mitigate it. So that was what this other amendment was for. Now, when we left on whenever our last meeting was on this, we basically had no disagreement with this particular bill. Is that correct? Okay. So that takes.
Are they gonna have to,
We're not.
is it gonna be both,
Now we're gonna.
executive council and and fiscal, or one, or just, this one is just one of them, I guess.
This one I think is GNC.
Approval of the executive council, that's Turcotte's. It's just the executive
Yeah,
council.
it doesn't need
But the
to,
bill as it stands says fiscal committee and executive council.
where do you see that?
That's what's in the bill now, in line 7. Oh, that's 402.
Yeah. That's 402. 409 doesn't, it's just because it's a disaster, it doesn't come to fiscal.
Okay. 409 just has executive council. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So now let's go to 402. And I mean, we'll go back and once we figure out what we're gonna do, we'll go back and figure out what we're gonna do. So Jennifer, would you two like to just come up and I don't know if we have any more questions that we need to ask, but I guess we do need to. Sure. Vanessa, now don't you go and have a baby next week, okay? Oh, well, I was just. Oh, okay, good, good. I probably shouldn't have said that. This is. Okay, yeah, that's all right. We're having fun, and that's what Division 2 is all about, is having fun.
So are you talking about 402 right now?
Yep,
Okay,
we're
so
gonna leave 409. We're not gonna talk about
are we gonna go
409.
back? Cause
Yeah, unless you have something you want to say,
about 409,
that's gonna change my mind.
a little bit.
Okay. All right.
So
All right.
Representative Turcotte's amendment, totally, we're on board with that.
Okay.
Just your amendment, just a couple of things, about it. Do you wanna take a stab at it? We've already kind of talked about it, so I'm not the expert.
Okay.
Just let you know a couple of things.
If there are a couple of things wrong, I want Mickey to get it right.
Yeah.
How's that, Chris? Hey, Mickey, are you tuned in?
Okay, so yes, we took a look at this amendment this morning, and in looking at it, there might be some. So the goal, I think, is well understood. The goal is to promote hazard mitigation funding, and for our agency in particular, we are aware of the hazard mitigation assistance funding grant programs, and that includes things like PDM, BRIC, hazard mitigation grant program, things you might have heard of in the
Right.
past, right? That being said, the way the language is currently written, where it says shall apply to all available hazard mitigation grant funding opportunities, there might be funding opportunities that exist outside of what our agency tracks and administers that we will not be able to confirm. And so I bring that up in part
Okay.
as well, knowing that there is a potential penalty for not meeting that requirement in the first sentence.
Just a minute.
Yes, of course.
So what you're saying is you would eliminate to all available and maybe put just shall apply for, something along that line?
Or could you say to all available hazard mitigation grant funding, no to the.
Well, that was my first question. I'm gonna use the word we want the word shall versus should.
Okay.
Shall,
line?
so shall is a mandate,
Yeah. What line are we on?
line 4.
Line 4.
So shall is a mandate, so
Without the word shall.
Oh, you know why I can't find this? It's because I'm reading your amendment as opposed to. I'm like. Yeah.
so
Okay.
okay, so where it says the municipality shall apply to all available hazard mitigation grant funding available to reduce the impact of a disaster reoccurrence. So let's stop there and just kind of dissect this first sentence. our question was shall. The second part was all available hazard mitigation grant funding. We only know what we
What we know.
administer at HSEM.
Okay.
We don't know if there are other programs in
Okay.
other places.
So what we're saying, a municipality shall apply for all hazard mitigation grants funding from FEMA. Yeah.
This is,
Yeah. Shall apply to hazard mitigation grant funding available.
this seems to be going off on a different direction. Almost a penalty for not doing it.
It is a penalty for not doing it, Tom. That's the point.
Well, it's not, I mean, it's not the intent of the bill is to,
But the intent of the bill is to provide money to the communities. However, if next year they have another flood event and they haven't done anything to mitigate the flood danger, then they should not be able to get the money. That's what this mitigation is all about. Okay,
so why don't we just put your amendment on to 409 and pass
because
that?
I'm not sure I'm ready for 409.
Both of these bills say amendment to 409, by the way.
No, we're on 409. Yeah, yeah. Jennifer, just give us the language you want us to use, please.
So we're on 409. So
Okay.
we can give you some suggested language for that first sentence about that, but I guess we need to talk about the second sentence where it talks about the penalty. Do you want to take a stab at that, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, I know my primary question was similar to yours, Rep. Bucco. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Stating, what was the intent of this bill? And so in diving into that and also looking at what this requirement might put in place for municipalities is keeping in mind that there are a lot of potential impacts of requiring something like this from a community. So when they submit an application to FEMA for hazard mitigation assistance programs, they're often required to do a complete application, and this often requires engineering and additional. I wrote some stuff down. Additional studies on the technical feasibility of multiple different potential outcomes in different projects, because FEMA will often not just accept one idea; they want to see multiple in order to choose the best one. Putting it in simple terms, so there might be a monetary cost associated with a community applying to HMA, and we wanted to make you all aware of that as part of this.
Can I just ask?
Yes, you may.
Is there a match for the mitigation funding also?
There is a federal and non-federal share. It's typically a 75 federal, 25% non-federal.
Except now it's up to 90-10.
Just for those two disasters from July and August of 2021, that's correct.
I thought mitigation funds were also 90-10.
That's correct for the hazard mitigation grant program, but not the other programs
Right,
that FEMA
right.
runs. Correct.
Hazard mitigation is at 90-10.
Just for these two, just for the July disasters, not all our disasters.
I thought it was I'm talking about mitigation.
Correct.
Okay.
It's 75-25, except for these two disasters for Cheshire.
Okay. And if they
Sullivan.
apply for mitigation funds, then it will be at 90.
So I think that this bill could potentially impact all future funding, not just these two disasters that are currently at a 90-10 cost share. So in thinking long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my problem. Okay. I don't care how we word it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want to mess somebody up. But I want communities that have events, disaster events, okay? If they are going to get money, either in a no-cost loan or if we support 402, that they have to do something to mitigate the problem. Now, if, obviously, if we have a snowstorm, you can get FEMA money for that, but that normally comes from the state. It's not an individual community. It's a statewide thing if you have a huge,
So FEMA reimburses for snow disasters.
I think.
You have to meet a certain threshold of
Yeah.
inches of snow, and
Right.
FEMA provides money for that.
Mhm.
Yep,
I mean, so you can't mitigate snow.
right.
Oh, maybe you could. So obviously to me, that doesn't fall into this category because if it's something that you can't mitigate, then, you can't mitigate it. But I just am concerned that I don't want communities to think that they can just let things go and come back 5 years from now and, ask for the money again.
Okay. So that would would have to be some language that says you're gonna rebuild to the higher standards.
It's not rebuild, Tom. It's mitigate. It's like the reason that the flood occurred.
Yeah.
Is because the river overflowed. Okay, I mean, right?
So
So-
the culverts and the bridges were not able
Right.
to handle the amount of rain that came down in
Right.
these two disasters. in
Right.
Cheshire
And
County.
so the mitigation may be, because I don't think FEMA will pay for upgrading the, maybe they will, upgrading the culverts. They will pay
That
for,
would be that could be a mitigation
but that,
project.
but that could be a mitigation project.
Yeah.
To increase the size of the culvert, if that's what it takes. But FEMA doesn't, on their disaster loans, I think, only puts it back to what it was.
So there are, without going into too nitty gritty detail, there are two ways that you can get mitigation funding from FEMA. One is through the disaster process itself. So FEMA public assistance projects, some of them have two parts: to bring it back to pre-disaster condition, but then what would it cost to mitigate it to make the facility better? So that's all wrapped into public assistance. Then there's the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP, which is a separate mitigation opportunity. Yep.
So with back to 409, I have two questions. So the intent of 409 is not just for Sullivan and Cheshire County, it's for all disasters moving
Anything.
forward. Okay, so I just
Anything.
needed to make sure that we're all on the same page there. Well, obviously you are, but we want to make sure
Okay,
we're with you.
well, this
Um,
bill was not just for
Okay,
Sullivan and
so
Cheshire.
just want to make sure that she and I are with you guys. Representative, sorry.
It's good.
The next piece would be, I lost my train of thought. Totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Okay. Good.
I think that paragraph is actually very close to what we want. To me, it would be something like the municipality shall apply for available hazard mitigation grant funding. The rest of that sentence is good. It's municipalities that do not apply for such funding shall be ineligible. And what it goes on to say, I think it's exactly what we want.
Well-
So I don't,
Both of these bills say and the municipality has applied for emergency assistance. They have to apply for it already.
So how about this?
What?
The municipality should consider applying for available hazard
No,
mitigation
no,
grant funding.
not should.
Sure.
Okay. The municipality shall consider applying for available hazard mitigation grant funding that would reduce the impact of future disasters for facilities that were repaired using exceptional disaster relief loan funding. So if they get a no interest loan from the state and they fix Main Street, they shall consider applying for hazard mitigation.
I don't think they should consider it. I think they need to.
So the only thing there, as Vanessa was saying, there could be a cost to the community to,
But there's a cost to the state if they don't.
Somebody's got to do the engineering.
Yeah,
so there's engineering work and then there's the match.
I got it.
And is the state going to go to 402? Is the state going to, if 402 passes, pick up the match? I'll leave it at whether it's 25 or 10, because we don't know if we'll get, what match we'll get moving forward. Is the state going to pick up the mitigation match in addition to the public assistance match? I'm sorry, it's not easy. It's not easy being
Do
us.
you think?
So we're making it more complex than it already was.
No.
I think that
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I think we all are kind of in agreement about the first shall apply to all available hazard mitigation grants, and I would be comfortable adding as administered by FEMA, since there are grants perhaps in Italy that we don't know about. I was wondering, for the second sentence, I hear the concern you have, and I don't know logistically if this would become a nightmare, but municipalities that do not seek funding may not be eligible for future assistant loans because there may be a good reason that they don't apply. So is there a possibility to say they may not be eligible and have that evaluated at the time, given circumstances which made it impossible for them to apply?
Can I follow up? I mean,
That's fine. Just a second.
Sorry.
Mary has something.
Who's gonna say what?
Oh, okay.
so I guess I'm a little bit concerned about, I mean, if we're saying that, particularly given the circumstances, that it may cost the municipality
Yeah.
money to make the application for the mitigation grant. So we're saying that the municipality must choose to spend the money, must choose to expend money for that cost, as opposed to, suppose it's a poor municipality and they say, listen, we should do this, but we also have a crime problem and we need another police officer. So we decide it's more important for us to get a police officer than, are they then ineligible because they made that decision?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that really is fair to do.
Never mind fair.
Well, I mean, I guess I sort of think that doing what's fair is generally a good idea.
Well, it's the question that you have to ask yourself, in my opinion, is if a community does nothing to solve their problem, why should the state solve their problem for them? Okay? I agree. We have to make choices. Okay? We have to make choices as a small community or a large community. I mean, it doesn't matter. But, it doesn't say that you have to apply for the mitigation funds the day after the event. You could,
So, if I could ask the director, when you're approving the initial emergency funding, how much engineering do you have to do? How do you tell them what shape to put it back into?
It's very project dependent. A simple example would be a culvert often requires something like a hydraulic study to determine what size the new culvert should be. It could be something like that.
So, so that language could be incorporated with the approval of the emergency funding to say, here's a range of the mitigation things that need to be done. And at the top of the list would be,
I don't think
I mean, that would be a way for that engineering to be done without the town having to pay for it separately. They pay for it out of the FEMA money, or FEMA. will.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Let's let Representative Aaron talk. She has.
I can get up. Well, yeah, sorry. These chairs don't move easily.
Sorry. So I just wanted to Okay, I just wanted to point out that probably one of the things that you might want to require is the town have a hazard mitigation plan, because not every town has one. And maybe what you want to be saying is that they should have a hazard mitigation plan and that they should demonstrate how they are pursuing this plan. Or, I mean, but first you have to have a hazard mitigation plan in hand.
Is that something that's required?
So it is, town is required by the state to have a hazard mitigation plan, sorry. So they do. So every town has a hazard mitigation plan that's approved by my office as well as FEMA in Boston. They have those plans because they cannot get disaster funds without that plan in place, right?
They cannot get,
So
sorry,
that's already
confirmation.
there.
They cannot receive hazard mitigation funding without that. So
Right.
technically, a community could opt out and not have that plan, but they would be at an extreme disadvantage. And additionally, this state through FEMA provides funding for these plans to be updated, and we coordinate that through our office. And the plans additionally outline mitigation strategies that each community comes up with, and basically those are their priorities for funding. So that might be an option because they're already defining where they think their issues are within the community that need to be addressed if funding becomes available.
Thank you.
No. Oh, yep. Good point.
question. Yes, they expire every 5 years.
Great.
But-
Thank you.
But we don't, thank you, Judy, but we don't know if the towns are doing anything about them.
No. Have a mitigation plan that's up
I
on.
think-
If it's on the shelf and it's not making any progress,
Well,
then
it's gonna be the same everywhere.
it's gonna be on the shelf, not making any
I
progress.
think we should consider the use of the word consider, as you guys brought up, and here's why. The municipality shall consider applying for the available blah, blah, blah. Because the second sentences say, well, the first one says you must, and then the second one says if you don't. So if you put the shall consider, it makes it stronger, but it still gives you the option of not, but at your own peril. If you don't apply for it, you're not getting any.
Of this.
So I think that would maybe be the easiest.
So I have a little sentence going here. The municipality shall consider applying for available hazard mitigation grant funding administered by HSEM that would reduce the impact of future disasters for facilities that were repaired using exceptional disaster relief loan funding. So,
I like that better. What bothers me is the shall, do not seek funding, shall be ineligible for future assistance. Because,
That's
it's just it's too capricious. It's too, wonder if somebody who's making the judgment doesn't know all the fact. It just,
If someone can tell me why the state should reward a community for failure to carry out their hazard mitigation program, I want to hear it.
What about if we said, and this is, seems to me this gives a little more room, the municipality should apply should
No,
apply for
we've
all.
got the first paragraph all done.
Well, wait a minute,
The
hang on.
first sentence.
The municipality should apply for all available hazard mitigation grant funding available to reduce the impact of a disaster reoccurrence. The governor and council and the fiscal committee may consider whether a municipality has sought such funding in considering whether to grant a loan under paragraph 2A. In other words, what that says is, it's a factor the governor and council can consider. They might say, wait a minute, this municipality was just completely, irresponsible. And we're not, they don't get another loan. But in circumstance A, but maybe there's another circumstance in which the governor and council and the fiscal committee say, all right, this is not, the municipality didn't act irresponsibly in these circumstances, and therefore they can get the loan. In other words, it allows it to, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's let the people at the time make the decision as to whether the municipality acted irresponsibly in not getting the loan, in not applying for the mitigation funding.
Well, then all the people in the town suffer for someone's mistake.
It's political.
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay, political.
Okay, so Lynn, what did you say for the second sentence?
I think whatever we do, we just have to, it has to be in, as to the other rights. Read your first sentence again.
The municipality shall consider applying for available hazard mitigation grant funding administered by HSEM that would reduce the impact of future disasters for facilities that were repaired using exceptional disaster relief loan funding.
That's perfect, and you keep the second sentence just as it is. Municipalities that do not apply for or seek or whatever you want, funding shall be ineligible. Just leave it as it is. That's the intent of the amendment.
Yes, I have two questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Municipalities that do not seek, what constitutes seeking? I guess I would have one question on that, and they might not get it, you know, they may try, they might not get it.
Applying for, use the word apply.
Applying
there.
for. And the other thing is that because I can just imagine, I can't imagine some of the consequences that might come from it. So I still would be more comfortable with municipalities that do not seek such funding may not be eligible, and have the opportunity for them to explain why they didn't. Apropos Representative Lynn, that they needed to hire a policeman, which is probably not going to happen. But just to give a little bit of space for something that we can't anticipate here. I certainly agree with the intent of this, that they really bloody well ought to be doing the best mitigation they can. But there may be a situation where it's not possible, or you know, something else happens. So I kind of like a little bit of space for them.
Go ahead.
So we were just talking about the word seek as well, because we use the word shall in the first sentence, and then we use the word seek in the second sentence. But then there's, do you want to go?
Sure. Just a fact to consider is that FEMA's mitigation programs are fairly limited. There's kind of a short list of types of projects that they will accept. So using the example we've been running with Main Street, for example, they may use an exceptional disaster relief loan to repair that facility and then turn around and seek mitigation funding only to find there are no viable options that FEMA mitigation will fund just because of the type of facility, in which case they could submit an application and they know from the beginning that it will not be eligible.
So historically, and Vanessa can add more details, but 60,000 foot, historically, we've worked with communities that have put in for mitigation projects that we try for a number of years, different ways to get them funding. And the process has not allowed us to be successful many times. So they go through lots of expense, lots of time, actually a couple of years with a couple of towns to come back to say, yep, sorry, no, it's not
But the-
allowable.
But the way it's worded, it doesn't say shall apply and receive. It just says you shall apply. So if they apply and then they're not given that money, that second sentence becomes meaningless.
And I think the use of the word seek in the second sentence.
Oh.
Are we exchanging that for? Okay. I was going to say seek does provide flexibility to the community to reach out to our agency and have a conversation about the viability of a project before spending money. So they're still exploring the opportunity without potentially incurring the expense of engineering costs, et cetera. We can give a community a pretty good idea of how viable a project might be before they ever have to take money out of their bank account to pay for it. So I think seek would provide that flexibility potentially, but the word apply may not.
Right? Good point.
Guess what? I don't care. Oh.
So can I just make one other
This
point?
this is why I'm not sure I like these things.
To the extent
Yes.
to the extent the concern was, you know, if you leave this discretionary, it's going to become political. I mean, I would remind you that in paragraph 2A, the governor, it says the governor may, with the approval of, may approve. This isn't a required thing. The governor has discretion, and so does the fiscal committee and the council. So it's, you know, to the extent that makes it political, it's political already. So
Can I just add a point? So we had to create a rule when the exceptional disaster relief loan bill was first introduced by Senator Gaida after the flooding up in Grafton County. We had to create a rule about how the exceptional disaster relief fund is administered through my office. 1-page application, this, that. I'll throw myself under the bus. We could, within the rule, address the second piece of this within the rule, potentially. Yep. So if this passes, we have to go to Jelcar anyways to change it, to meet the no interest and the governor declares a state of emergency. So we have to change the rule likely that we'll have to change the rule.
No,
I
we're
don't think
not.
so.
We're not. So,
I'd say you go with your rewritten first sentence and just leave the second sentence alone. Right? That gives you your seek.
So
Still
municip-
gets it still mandates, or it still basically says what I think Rep. Umberger is getting at, and that's what I would agree on, that if you're not making any effort to mitigate, you're not going to get paid funds in the future.
It says shall be ineligible. I'm not,
Right. That's right, and that's what it's supposed to be. If they don't seek available hazard mitigation, they shall be ineligible. I think that's the whole intent.
But can't you envision a situation where it wouldn't be their fault and you're penalizing them beyond something that they couldn't control? And so I'm just asking a little bit, but I don't know about logistically who all's going to make that decision. But it seems just prudent to have a little bit of wiggle room for what we cannot anticipate here.
yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do if they don't? You're gonna, so what are you gonna do if they don't do that and they get wiped out again? Yeah, oh well.
oh well.
How long's oh well last? And the roads, and you
City floats down.
can't get any emergency vehicles or school buses down the road. I'm not gonna support the second sentence here.
I have to say, I think it's too harsh also.
So what do you want to put in there? You want me to use the term may?
Just,
I'd be happy with May.
just the first sentence that says you shall, apply for the hazard mitigation, although it sounds like they already are getting advice on that through FEMA.
Oh, they may or may not. I mean, I don't know when the last time this flood in Sullivan and Chester County took place. Do you know?
This July 2021.
Before that?
Before that,
It's, as far as a declared disaster goes, it's been a while, but there are many instances of flooding that don't rise to the level of a federal declaration. It
Yeah.
still costs the communities money.
But we don't know when those were.
Our office doesn't track those.
Doesn't track them. All right. Can I get my hardline friends like me to agree to may? Six.
Funding may not be eligible or may be ineligible. I like may not be eligible. I support the idea. I think it's a really good idea. I think you ought to do mitigation. I'm just thinking, there might be that situation where it doesn't work. but that they may not be eligible for future assistance. And to me, that kind of gets their, if I can say this, button
Gets
gear.
their attention.
It gets their attention. That's better than button gear. Yeah, that gets their attention, and there are consequences. And I think, you know, the consequences are real. There should be consequences. I just like a little teensy weensy little pillow.
And
Municipalities do sometimes, I mean, they have contracts they have to pay. Sometimes there are emergencies that come up that they've got to take care of first.
So we're gonna say I mean, if this.
Let me just say this, okay? By the time they get their FEMA money, they get the work done, they get their, you know, FEMA doesn't work very quickly. And it could be 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow. But during that time, in my opinion, they should be planning for how they're going to mitigate this from happening again.
Demonstrate
Or you,
progress toward meeting their hazard mitigation plan.
that's fine. I don't
it
care.
may not.
So if you leave, if you leave shall in the first sentence, right? That says, that's the command. You shall do this. And I think all Representative Murray is saying, and I agree with her on this, is if you change shall to may on line 6, then you've told them you have to do this. But in the sort of penalty provision, you've said, and if you don't, we may not give it to you. We're not saying for sure we won't, but we may not.
Okay. Did Mickey get all that?
May on the second may not be eligible, I think is clearer to understand.
If you put may rather than shall, who's going to make the determinant?
I guess that was my concern of logistics here,
So-
but in the rest of the bill, you've got the governor and approval of the executive council, and that seems to be built into the other part of the bill.
Yep, because they may or may not get that from the executive council and the governor.
Right, and they could take, and the governor and council and the fiscal committee could all consider the fact that they didn't do
Yeah,
that.
fiscal committee doesn't need to be in on that.
Okay, all right, well,
We
that's
can
fine.
go to Homeland Security and they can make a recommendation.
They make a recommendation to the governor and council.
Because I think there's got to be somebody who knows really what they're doing. GNC really doesn't, not, do not have my mic on. But I mean, they're not experts in.
Somebody else has to approve it anyway. Somebody's got to approve it. It's usually them, isn't it? I mean, the municipality applies for it, the state may contribute something, and then FEMA is going to be the final approval.
But to that point, it ought to be pretty obvious whether or not they've done any work. You know, I'm not sure it takes an engineer to say that, you know, oh, you've just not done anything and we're not going to give you more money. You know, this is bricks and mortar.
Yeah, it is.
And they've been working together.
Okay. Did you have something else, Representative Turcott?
No.
So, Chris, you have all this down so that you can create a new amendment for us?
So I'd like you to go through it one more time so that we have all the language correct. 'Cause it's been pretty much all over the map. So the first sentence, if I could just have somebody go through what's agreed to with that.
Okay.
Municipality may consider, shall consider.
Jennifer will read that.
Oh,
So
okay.
what we had was the municipality shall consider applying for available hazard mitigation grant funding administered by HSEM that would reduce the impact of future disasters for facilities that were repaired using exceptional disaster relief loan funding. Reduce the impact of future disasters for facilities that were repaired using exceptional disaster relief loan funding.
Something about that.
And then in the second sentence, all you were changing was funding may not be eligible on line 6. So you were striking shall and making the ineligible to in. Yep, funding may not be eligible.
Can I also
And leaving
ask,
seek.
It's a different,
Or else. Punitive.
Yeah, but if you have, but I mean, with a may,
This word. So to me,
with a may on there, it's not, I don't think it does completely defeat it. What it's because it says to whoever's going to make this decision, the governor and council, that this is a factor. If you haven't, that, you know, that they could say in any particular case, we're not awarding this, we're not going to award this loan because you didn't do this.
And then you're back to a political decision.
it's two different activities. It's applying and then it's,
That makes sense to me, because I mean, if those things, if we're saying those things are important, that people should be updating them, and this is gonna be tied to something,
You need to turn on your mic. I know, but
just-
otherwise
I-
people
I-
can't hear.
I just feel if we're going to make this high risk, because if they're not applying, it becomes high risk, because they will not get money in the future. By being able to demonstrate progress they have made toward meeting the goals or areas cited in their hazard mitigation plan, I mean, that would be whether they're showing progress or not. I just hate to have a place that's gone through a horrible disaster to all of a sudden be told, well, sorry, but you didn't apply for these grants, so you can't get any money again. I mean, God forbid the same place should have the same kind of a disaster 3 or 4 times. And that area.
That's
has-
what I'm trying to prevent,
Well-
okay? Because obviously, we haven't done a good job of that.
But some natural disasters aren't always avoidable. And I mean, some things you can't always fix.
Suggestion, what about if you had just one sentence that said something like this? Any municipality that has already received a non-interest loan under subsection A shall not be eligible for another loan for a disaster in the same area unless it demonstrates that it has made substantial progress on a disaster mitigation program, or however you want to phrase it. I mean, that says that they have to have made progress, and that, you know, they're trying. Yeah. So what about that?
Go ahead, Kate.
I think maybe we can do fewer words. I can see where you're going. Municipalities must demonstrate progress on their mitigation plan, or they will not be eligible for future assistance.
Fine with me. That's fine with me.
Define progress or substantial progress.
Well, again, I guess apropos what we had said before, this is bricks and mortar. You know, is the road under construction? Do they have a contract with the road builder? So I think, so.
That's not what mitigation's all about. That's the actual disaster. The mitigation is fixing the culvert on the side road to divert the water from downtown.
Moving the road that was down at river level up 4 feet so it doesn't happen again.
Well, they may not be, but
Right, but the other thing, I think Representative is correct on this. I mean, suppose that there are several problems in a town, and what they've done is after the first loan, they've developed a sort of, you know, capital improvement program or whatever you ever want to call it, to deal with areas in the town where they're susceptible to flooding. But the ones that they decided to work on first were something other than this particular area. I mean, would we then say, well, because you chose to fix, Elm Street as opposed to Main Street, you're not going to be eligible for another loan? I would tend to say maybe if there's some, that in a particular case was a really unreasonable decision, but maybe it isn't a unreasonable decision.
All right, so if I'm understanding this correctly, does that second sentence meet with your, if, Kate, could you repeat what you said? Representative Murray, could you repeat what?
Municipalities must demonstrate progress on their mitigation plan in order to be eligible for future assistance or future loans under whatever the rest of it. Municipalities must demonstrate progress on their mitigation plan. But there's some words missing there.
I just wanted to also provide a little bit more context for the local hazard mitigation plans. So each plan is required to put into their local hazard mitigation plan mitigation strategies for high risk hazards that they identify. So for example, majority, if not all of our communities identify flooding as a high risk because it's statewide. There are typically 15 to 30 mitigation strategies that any one community can put into their plan. There's no federal requirement that they attack all of these at any one given time. It's just supposed to be a priority for funding opportunities. So when you say make progress on their hazard mitigation plan, I am confirming, are you looking for them to make progress on their identified mitigation strategies within their plan?
Now, I think we're looking for strategies on the ground, actual projects that are undergo.
Sorry, let me clarify. Those 15 to 30 mitigation strategies typically include facilities on the ground as well. But they might also include planning efforts in addition to that. But for example, it's likely that they're identifying facilities that are undersized, like culverts or bridges that are in disrepair, et cetera.
I understand the planning is important. I think I'm leaning towards, and I think some of us other here are leaning towards actual work being done beyond the planning. Implementation is a good word. So municipalities must demonstrate implementation on their plan. No, we want the actual implementation.
Are we trying to make this apply though to the town's mitigation plan, or specifically to the areas that have been ruined in the previous event, such as in Ackworth? I think that's the intent of this. We know this happened here. What are you doing to fix? You're going to apply to fix this. And if you don't, and it happens again, because it talks about that area or that specific.
So one of the words that causes us just a little bit of whatever is the word location, because we didn't know if that meant, i.e. the town of Vanessa or Main Street in the town of Vanessa. Is when you say location, do you mean the entire community, or do you mean the facility? Our word facility that we used in that first sentence means a road, a bridge, a culvert that needs to be fixed.
That was what I was looking at. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I can agree to municipalities must demonstrate progress on implementation of their hazard mitigation plan.
Stop. Is that the end of it?
Oh, it would be the strategies within that. No, it would be the facility, Main Street in Vanessa Town.
Not the mitigation plan, because you all said that's a townwide thing, right?
Could there be a situation, though, where, this bridge was washed away, so they've repaired the bridge with their emergency, and there's a wide range of mitigation possibilities. And this bridge is going to be okay for another 7 years, but this one's going to only last 2 weeks. If they're working on this bridge that's going to go down in 2 weeks, I'd be okay with that with regards to this. I wouldn't think, let's ignore this bridge and get this one in order to get this funds. I just assume they fix the other bridge too. So in that sense, it wouldn't necessarily be the same location.
I think the intent of Rep. Umberger's
What you read in the,
amendment is that you're making attempts to mitigate the problems that was caused in the last event. That's the way I understand it, and that's, as an example, the example I gave is every 10 years, the Mississippi and the Missouri River flood, and the FEMA and the feds go in and give people all kinds of money, and another 10 years, the exact same thing happens over and over and over. What we want to do is fix that scenario. So the culvert under the bridge in Ackworth, it was too small. When you put it back, it needs to be bigger. I think that's what we're getting. So I think you're using the word facility. It's not the town's plan, but the facility that was affected.
I think that's what you read the first time.
So if you say municipalities must demonstrate progress on the implementation municipalities must demonstrate progress on the implementation of their hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for future assistance under this section for disasters affecting facilities where money was previously granted. I hope somebody got it because I was just kind of rambling.
You had the magic
Chris?
words and it wasn't recorded. Nobody recorded.
Come on, Chris. Mickey would have had that.
Failing the committee today. I
Yeah, yeah.
apologize.
So,
Yeah.
Chris, you ready for this?
Did you get him on the phone and ask him if he got that?
How about this? Municipalities must demonstrate progress on the implementation of their hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for future assistance, and then continue the rest of your amendment in the second sentence where it says for future assistance, blah, 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 change locations to facilities. Did we get that? Do you need me one more time? Okay. Municipalities must demonstrate progress on the implementation of their hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for future assistance loans under this section for disasters affecting facilities where an exceptional disaster relief loan was previously granted.
That doesn't.
Good with that.
Okay.
So
Chris, you good?
does somebody have that exact language? Do you have it? You have it, okay.
It's in
good, 'cause
here.
I don't.
Okay. Now I think we should move to 402. So Chris, we'll have to,
Why do we even need it?
why don't we combine these two into one? Is that, yeah,
Burger into one amendment.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that, okay.
And that will replace all of 402?
No. We're just, yeah, we'll have an amendment.
Yeah.
But it's combining these two pieces of paper into one with the changes that we made.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So Representative Umberger, is the intention that the division's gonna come back to look at this amendment one more time before it goes to the executive?
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
Okay.
Uh, yes, we are not going back to the other one.
Can I ask
Why,
a question?
what do we need them both?
Well, can we look at 402, but then 402, what it's doing relative to financial assistance for municipalities affected by the disaster, and this is giving authority to the governor. Isn't this the same thing?
Oh, that.
Um,
Yes,
that Mickey gave us, this Title I, the state and government, Chapter 9? I feel like we're just kind of repeating ourselves
Yeah,
or creating another bill on top of what we already have.
which is probably not necessary.
no.
Where do I have that? I know I have it.
Well, he gave it to us the last second.
I know, I know.
It's 913D.
Yeah. I found.
So Representative Umberger, if I might, I think the difference might be 402 it doesn't require a civil emergency be declared. And that's the difference between what Mickey provided you
Okay,
in the language, yeah.
so the governor, this gives the governor authority
Yeah.
to take necessary steps in the event that there hasn't been an emergency declaration?
And it's specific to declared disasters.
Does Mickey send you that?
Yes, I'm getting a lot of assistance. Been a long time since I've been in the division room, so.
Especially,
I don't know
I
if
don't
we-
think you've ever been in two. I didn't think so. That's because we have so much fun that,
I don't know.
okay,
I don't know that we need, they both amend the same RSA 21P.
They are different. The major difference, and I'm opposed to this one, I don't think we need it also, but the main difference is this is a grant, the other one's a loan. I mean, when you get right down to it, that's the major difference.
This-
One's a grant, one's a loan, and I'm personally not in favor of a all-out grant.
I wasn't, so 409 that we just did was a non-interest loan. This one here is just general funds that the governor can disperse.
as,
It doesn't say anything about paying it back.
that's right. It's a grant. Yeah.
It's just not
Rep-
called a grant.
Representative Murray?
Can someone, I think I have this right now, but I would just confirm this. When I read this, the governor with approval fiscal, may approve disbursements of financial assistance to affected communities. When I was first reading this, my understanding was that it was pertaining to the amount that the state or the municipality has to pay back to FEMA, let's just say the 90%, the 10% that has to get paid back. But the way this is written and what I'm hearing now is that the governor could potentially give, $300 million to some little town that had a disaster. There's nothing here that focuses it on that 10%. So am I misreading this, or did this get changed significantly and I'm uncomfortable with that change?
This, if I might, this
Yeah,
is
I
a,
think I think the way you're reading it is exactly right. I mean, that could happen. That's not maybe what was intended, but that's what the language says.
this language is from an amendment by Senator Morse in March 29th. And it's just a wide open so that the governor can act right away.
Yes, go ahead.
So that was one of the questions so I have a little list of things that, this is open-ended, Representative. It doesn't say July 2021 flooding. So I wasn't sure if the intent was to have this bill in place for every disaster moving forward. It doesn't talk about the match, which could be 25% or 10%. So I think, right, this is the first time I've been here for 30 years. And this is the first time that I've seen a 10% match. It's always been 25%. And then there was the time that the state picked up the match. So it is a grant, but if you want to put the word match in there, use the word match, but don't put a percentage in case we get another 10%, but we might only get 25%. So if you,
But in Senator Khan's testimony, he talked about that. So he inferred it, but it's not written in the text. So if it's not in the text, it's not any place.
The other thing, this doesn't talk about mitigation efforts either. When you give a grant, there's going to be less of a impetus for the community to work on their mitigation efforts on the whatever the issue was. If you're just being granted the money with no requirement to pay it back, like a loan would do, the mitigation part might not be so important to the town.
So, can I just make a comment?
Certainly.
If we, it seemed to me that the main purpose of this whole area of having some, the state have some ability to provide funds was to be able, if I understood, Representative Aaron's 409, and even if 402 was limited, and I think it would have to be because for the reasons that Representative Murray stated, but even if it was limited to simply, what happens to can the state sort of forgive some of the money that, some of the money that is, the money for a disbursement that's not, that's made under 409 that is not covered by the federal reimbursement, can the state forgive some part of that loan? Even if 402 was limited to that purpose, that's not something that's going to happen right away. You're talking about something that happens way after the fact, a year or two later. So I guess my suggestion is, why don't we do this sort of incrementally? 409, let's do 409 and sort of see how it, how it works for over a few years. And then if that turns out to be not satisfactory and the legislature needs to do something else, we'll have some experience with how 409 has worked, and then we can do that.
Now, my understanding, 402, based on the testimony, was that 402 would come into play when the FEMA has already identified eligibility. They've determined 100% of the funds that would be eligible, and 402 would be directed toward that 10% of the funds that they don't pay because it's 90-10 or 75-25, whatever. And so if the state so chose, they could make a grant to a municipality. That's it.
so that's what we think the intent is, as well as you.
That's
what-
my understanding.
Yep.
Basically designed to help the municipality absorb, since the municipality can't absorb all the costs of these projects on their own, then this would help them do that.
No. That's not what this says. What this says is when it comes time to pay FEMA the 25%, then you can request this grant. You've already laid out all your money. You've already.
Sure.
I don't care what percent.
Sure.
Okay.
My clarification was just regarding the FEMA process. You don't have to pay FEMA money for the 25%. The town expenses the full 100%, and FEMA just reimburses whatever percentage is applicable to that disaster.
Right. Yeah. I got that. I know
So-
that.
So 402 is the after the fact. So FEMA's paid the 90% or 75%, whatever. And then a community can ask the state for whatever FEMA does not pay. And then the state makes a determination whether they want to provide a community that grant or not.
Oops, the community's already paid the money.
They've done the work. They've been reimbursed 90%. So we fixed a bridge. We got paid $900,000. There's $100,000 that was the piece that FEMA was not paying. We want to come to the state and say, hey,
But they've already expensed it.
correct.
What they're asking for
And they're
is
asking the state to give them a grant so
To-
that they become whole.
reimburse some of it.
This is where I think the mitigation goes. In this one.
No.
No. I'm fine with them, with this as the match. This is just way open-ended. This goes way beyond, so I don't even know why this is here. I'm comfortable with the match, and can go either way, if it's a grant or if it's a loan. But I think, especially when you're having small communities that are suffering, quite a dreadful tragedy or disaster, that they can come to the state to ask for help. 50%, to fill in the 10% or 25%, whatever it is. So I like that idea. I don't like how this has been expanded to pretty much everything, it seems.
This stuff.
So can I just raise a question by a sort of an example? So let's, if I'm understanding correctly, what 402 is designed to address is this situation. Let's say that that municipality suffers a disaster, and just, making a number up, it's going to cost $1 million to fix it. So the municipality applies to FEMA and they say, yep, I'm sorry, the municipality applies for a loan under 409 for $1 million from the state, and in anticipation of getting money from FEMA. And the state gives the municipality $1 million. Now the municipality applies to FEMA. FEMA says, yes, you're qualified. We're going to give you, let's assume it's a 90-10, we're going to give you $900,000. So they have $900,000. Now the municipality uses that $900,000 to repay $900,000 of the loan, but they still owe another $100,000. And if I understand what 402 is designed to accomplish, it's designed to say that in effect, the state can forgive some or all of that other $100,000. Is that basically what is happening? By turning it from a loan into a grant.
That's one such scenario. I guess in order for a community to utilize 402, they don't technically have to have a loan from the state. So they could have just expended the amount out of pocket and then come to the state and say, we need assistance. So two different potential scenarios.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yes, from someone we've not heard from.
Not much. Right. Is there anything in law right now that has a forgiveness feature? Like, did Allsted get forgiven at 10%?
Allstat, that was the 25% match that the state picked up.
No, wasn't that 90? Was that the 90-10?
No, this past July is the 90-10.
Is there anything in law that says that
There's no law right now for anything for match from
for
the state.
no forgiveness? In
No.
other words,
No.
you owe the 25%.
Or the 10%, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yep. The original bill was the
Match only.
match only, that the state would pick up half of the match. So when we first got it, it was 25%. So the original bill was to be like 12.5% this town would pay, 12.5% the state would pay. And it's morphed into this.
Follow up. Also, on these mitigation plans, how well do these towns follow through with their mitigation plans?
It varies. In follow through, you mean
Well, they do some, I mean, they make progress.
Right, they
which-
address some of the issues that the plan
Correct.
identified. It varies, and I think a lot of it has to do with how much funding the town actually has to accomplish those goals, because some things might be simple, like, you know, a small culvert to a slightly larger culvert. Some issues might include a large bridge. It depends what
Right.
the town's need is and what their assets are to put towards that, their capital improvement projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to think about this or do we? Because we're gonna have to come back on the other one anyhow.
Could we get a copy of the original bill before it was amended to be so open-ended?
Yeah. It's on the website, right?
If you go to the legislative website and go to the bill
Yeah.
search, and you go to the docket.
Why don't you just do that and have Janet bring it to us?
Okay.
I've never been able to go backwards on the website to get to a
Well, you go to the
previous
docket. Yeah,
incarnate.
It's in the docket.
Yeah. Well, we'll have Janet run it. Because I had to have a lesson in how to do that.
It's listed, it's listed as introduced or amended.
So Janet will run that off for us. So I guess that, what I would suggest is that we will, recess this, hearing on both bills.
You're gonna retest?
Recess.
Oh, recess.
When do we have to be done? When will we be executing?
What it sounded like. Sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
They're working
These-
less and less.
Yeah. These bills they have to be done by the 28th, but I'm going to hold some sort of a executive session before then to clear up the ones that we can, and then whatever. I guess these are the only two we had, right? Yeah. No, I'm talking about that are due the 28th. These are the only ones we have. So, next,
And Representative Umberger, I think it's 426 is your exec session.
well, don't pay any attention to what that said.
Okay, I'll ignore that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you come up and vent? Say whatever you want.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me.
By the way, you don't have to sit back there so shy. Not in Division 2.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate that. But I wasn't going to make any comments as we had supported both pieces of legislation. They seem to be companion pieces of legislation, however, both doing something very different. One providing the grant type funds, and one, of course, ensuring that communities can apply for the loan situation. We are not FEMA experts. We certainly leave that to FEMA to come into our communities. We know that towns develop hazardous mitigation plans. However, in many cases, it's the unforeseen, especially that first time around, that unforeseen situation that tends to occur. It's somewhat like the pandemic. We all planned and had those plans, and they didn't work. And I think the language you're proposing seems reasonable, as long as it still allows a municipality some grace, should there be some extenuating circumstance that is unforeseen and that we couldn't consider on SB 409. And of course, we support SB 402, so we would not like to see that bill be ITL'd, because there could be a situation in which there's value in that bill as well. That's all I have to say.
This is, don't move. This could be to the committee as well, but could we put some sort of a dollar value on that? On this grant? I don't know. Hmm.
The size of the community. You know, you have a little town.
Yeah, but little towns don't, I mean, in this particular case, it doesn't matter. It's a disaster that makes the difference. So, well,
Wasn't it that it was going to be hard to predict what a disaster costs? So we talked about, I guess the percentage is the best we came, because if you're looking to try to make it equitable for a larger community as opposed to a smaller community. I mean, the larger communities are going to have greater resources. They have a tax base that's larger than a town of 900. I guess I would like just to see it go back to the match and not be potentially open up to everything.
I tend to agree, but in a city like mine, and I use my tornado, some horrible event that wipes out half our city, or even a portion of our city, I mean, that would be millions and millions of dollars, to address, and we have reserves, but we don't have those kind of reserves.
I think we're getting distracted here by including the grants and the percentages and all that. I don't think there's any of that in here. I think this language just gives the governor authority to act right away.
Right, well, it's open-ended. I mean, it's,
But that's what it is.
That was one of the things that why we got to this version of 402 was because in the original version,
Yeah.
somebody asked, well, how much do we budget? And I was asked this morning by was it you? No, it wasn't you. Somebody this morning, how we're, working on the 24-25 budget, how much do you put in your budget? And I said, I can't project that because I don't know what the disaster end costs are gonna be.
I understand that, and what I'm saying, and even in the hearing, Senator Morse asked how much is the total, and he was looking for total money, but this is his amendment. And he amended the whole bill to just say, well, just give the governor the authority to act quickly.
And then the funds have to be available to do so. So-
Well,
well, if you appropriate them in the
Right.
budget, they're there. I mean, it's,
Right.
he's got to draw a warrant.
no,
for-
but not now, but that's the amount to put in. I mean, what do you put in?
you don't put it in the budget.
Or it could be surplus. I mean,
In a trust?
Oh, but it's emergency.
'Cause that was tried this morning, right?
There's nothing in
Or
here that
that-
says the state pays anything. There's the option of helping out the communities, or at least going back to the match of saying, well, the state will put in 5,000 and we'll cover your 5,000 too, but there's really nothing here that requires the state to actually do anything.
So I guess I have a question, and I'm not sure that I still understand this, and maybe the people from maybe you can explain it to me. Suppose that under 402 as it's worded right now, if there was a disaster, it was declared by the governor or the president declared it, whatever. If the governor decided with all the appropriate approvals to make a grant right at the beginning to a municipality to pay some or all of the expenses of the disaster, if I'm understanding correctly, but you correct me if I'm wrong, FEMA would say, well, wait a minute, you've gotten this money, whatever it is, you've gotten $500,000 as a grant from the state, so that $500,000 you've got another source for that. It's no longer eligible. Is that right?
That was part of the discussion in the session this morning,
Right.
actually, regarding potential duplication of benefits.
Right.
And so I think that one of the recommendations that came out of that meeting was putting something in here with language specifying that this money would only be used for non-federal match, which is not reimbursable by the federal government. And then potentially things that are not eligible under FEMA's public assistance program or eligible for federal funding in general. So because this bill changed from the original one that was introduced to the amended one, the types of things that could be funded also changed. Originally, it was just the match for these two disasters. And then it looks like it has changed to potentially include match for any disasters moving forward or in the past, and also things that are not FEMA eligible. So the option is, I guess, to determine what is the goal of the bill. And then from there, shift the language to achieve that goal.
Right. So in other words, and this is really, it sort of goes along with what Representative Murray was saying earlier. We can't pass this bill just the way it is because it's not limited to either a match or non-eligible. It's for anything. So we need, I mean, unless, if we didn't make those kind of changes, there would be running a risk that by having this law, there's the FEMA would say it's not, the money is not the money, it's duplication of, you have money from another source.
Correct. There could be a potential duplication of benefits. However, if it were structured to include language such as this funding may only be used for non-federal match for disasters, then we believe that that would remove that risk.
If,
Representative Murray?
thank you. If I may, Representative Waltz passed me language in this to add to the end of line 8. I'm just going to start reading from the previous line. The General Court and Executive Council may approve disbursements of financial assistance to affected municipalities to the extent they are not eligible for FEMA benefits or the municipality's part of the FEMA match.
We reading that?
Can you read that one more time?
Okay, assistance to the affected municipalities to the extent they are not eligible for FEMA benefits or the municipality's part of the FEMA match.
We reading that?
Representative Waltz scribbled this down on my
She
paper.
pulled it right out of the
I
sky.
can just do this, and I'm not even a lawyer. It just comes to me like a Ouija board. So,
Oh, you didn't print it out over here.
I can't do that yet.
That's the next on the learning curve. Okay. Well, all right. If you want to give that to Chris for an amendment, I'm still not sure that I like this bill at all. But we're gonna have to get together anyhow.
Can't we just make one bill and add, I mean, this does have potential, I think, the possibility.
Let me just say, I don't want it in one bill because I can support the other, but not this. Okay? That way, I don't want to be in a situation where I can't support the combined bill. So, okay. So you'll give that to Chris. We'll get an amendment. Next. Okay, I was going to recess this. Is anybody going to be here around tomorrow? Is that too soon? Thursday? Oh,
Oh, yeah, or Catherine, wait.
Won't be here till next week.
okay. We'll recess this until, I have to set a time, don't I? Yeah. No, I meant a time. Okay, Friday we've got fiscal committee, you've got the funeral. We don't want to discuss these after the funeral. So can you hang on just 1 second? Let me go check Janet's calendar. because it has mine on there.
Today? No, you're for expanded government, aren't you? Don't give me that look. Don't give me that look. I think you've solved the problem that we had originally, which is get money to the towns to fix the problem.
Yeah,
The loan, and that's it.
that's what both of these,
Well, yeah, that's,
I mean, that's. I mean, well, this other bill is grant, it's a grant. And grants are money, because you gotta take money from somebody to give it to somebody else. The treasury, yeah, the treasury, it comes right out of trees. Federal funds? No. Oh, general, yeah. You still gotta take it from somebody to give it to somebody. Well, if you wanna pitch in, hey, you can write a check.
Is that somehow limited in some way that this would not be? I don't know. That just limited to civil emergency might be different than that's different. In other words, is a civil emergency different than when the governor declares a state of emergency? And you do that now, it's the same thing. Somebody wants free until they have a thing.
Milton Friedman, it's easy to spend other people's money.
I asked that same question when I was reading it, I just went back to this, it was a state of emergency.
I just realized he was on a normal. You know what that is? You're on a normal. It was a weird watch.
Right.
Left-handed, and where you go. It's very unusual because, well, because the old days you had to wind your watch,
Yes.
and left-handers have to be
Oh,
contortionist.
look at this.
What the heck? Is that on a, that's a left-handed watch or what?
I guess so.
You're kidding. Is that gonna, really? I'll be damned.
Okay. Do we want to do the 18th? Appears that we haven't gotten anything scheduled there. Yeah. Yeah.
As long as we do it before, it will be done by 4 o'clock or by 3:30.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to say 10? Does that work? Or would you rather have 1? Okay.
Well, yeah, but it's out of subcommittee, so it's no big deal. You'll be here for executive session.
Yeah. Does that work?
I know where you're going.
10 o'clock on the 18th? I hope. Len may be enjoying his day in Rome or something, or Paris, or,
Terrible.
Madrid. Yeah.
Still have a little body.
Okay. Anyhow, we'll plan on 10 o'clock on the 18th, and it seems to me that I've got something going on the 18th that I didn't want to come down. Yeah, let's do the 19th instead of the 18th. Can't remember. You tell me.
10 o'clock.
No.
We got 2 travelers here.
Okay, 2 travelers.
Yeah, Tom and I have a hard time getting here for 9 o'clock meeting.
10.
10 o'clock, okay, I can do that.
Can you make it at 19?
Okay. Yeah. No, work. We just do work sessions here. We vote, but all we do is take our vote to the main committee. Does that work for you too? Okay. Okay. That's all right.
10 o'clock, okay.
You're no different than the rest of us. No. No. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think we've got 409 settled. And it's just what we decide to do with 402. Okay. Boy, Mickey is so happy he wasn't here today. I don't know, he's someplace. Right? Okay. Thank you, Chris. You have done a marvelous job.
You haven't got the amendments back yet.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. That's you've done a wonderful job so far. Okay. See y'all.